Hi, today I want to show you a little bit about heat embossing. Heat embossing can give your projects a certain pop that you can't get with just ink. For example, if you notice on this project, we have white heat embossed sentiment on the black. So let me show you how we achieved that. First of all, I'm going to start with my black paper, and I'm going to use a clear stamp. And so I'm going to peel that stamp off of its backing. And when I place it on my acrylic block, I want to put the smooth side down and have the actual part I'm going to stamp up, so I feel that texture there. Then I'm going to take my ink, and to make this really pop, I'm going to use white ink and white embossing powder. You could use clear ink or clear embossing powder, but you don't get quite the same effect. And I'm just going to make sure that I'm tapping lightly in there to get it inked. Now I'm going to come back over and I'm going to stamp, and I'm going to firmly press it down on my paper. There I have my stamped image. Now I'm going to add my embossing powder. And I want to put something underneath it to catch that extra embossing powder, because there is an expense to this and I can reuse it. So I'm going to use a simple paper towel. Take my embossing powder, sprinkle it over the top of it. And because I want to capture this again, I'm going to just tap off the excess here. And as I look, there's a few spots that didn't quite come off, and so I can take my paintbrush and brush those off. And I want to make sure they're all gone, because anything that's on there that the heat gun hits is actually going to set and turn white. So make sure you clean off anything that you don't want to actually have embossed. Okay? When I'm done, I just take this little funnel and I'm going to pour my embossing powder back in to my jar. That easily, I've captured it all again, and I can reuse it. So now that I have my stamped sentiment all ready to go, I'm going to turn on my heat gun. And before I do that, let me tell you a little bit what I'm watching for. Right now, if you look at it, it's pretty dull, but I want it to turn shiny, and that tells me that the embossing powder has hooked up with the ink. So I'm going to start over on one side, and I'm going to watch for it to go kind of shiny. And once it does, then I'm going to start moving across slowly. And I want to keep my heat gun a couple of inches away from the surface. If you get too close, it can burn. And I just go all the way across until the entire stamped sentiment is set. That quickly, I've created this stamped sentiment, and look at that pop you get with the white on black. So now I want to show you another project, and this one actually uses some color ink instead. So you'll notice on this project I've got these borders here, and this is using embossing powder. And this time I'm going to use colored embossing powder and clear ink. I'm going to do it on brown paper. And I'm using, again, an acrylic stamp. These are really great because you can see them so clearly. And this is a well-loved stamp. I used it with some other inks. So I've got it all positioned. I'm going to take my clear ink, and I'm just going to come along. Because this is a longer stamp, it's easier for me to put the ink down onto the actual stamp. Make sure I've got it all set up, and then I'm going to come and stamp right along my paper, again pressing firmly. Because I want to capture this extra embossing powder, I'm going to again put my paper underneath it, take my embossing powder, sprinkle it on. And notice I'm not being dainty about this. It doesn't really matter. You just want to make sure you get everything coated well. And again, I'm going to tap it off and come back with my paintbrush and grab anything that I don't want to have heat embossed. And since you already saw me dump it in, and you know I can do that, I'm not going to worry about that. I'd come back and use my heat gun and set it. This is the effect that you get on the other end. You get this beautiful design that has very detail to it. It's a nice pop because you've got the green on the brown background, and there's lots of different colors. So I challenge you to go out and find some different colors of embossing powders and ink, combine them in different ways on cardstock, pattern paper, whatever, but most of all, have fun creating.